Hi, everyone. Well, I think that this part of the closing session of the event is supposed to be more than a full session. It's just a space to reflect on some major, conclusions or reflections that we have in our minds regarding the convergence. I will start, but I welcome you, Kathryn and Ben, and whomever wants to keep following me. Well, I am very excited. I'm so inspired, excited. My brain has extended and gotten bigger in these 2 days of listening to all these talks and discussions about important issues of how to build the next systems. I have too much information in my brain right now. I think it's been a very helpful space for me because I'm also new at this job of prefiguring, what the next system is, uh, and also at the teachings, by the way. So, the first thing that I would like to say, just to kickstart the session, is that there is a lot of work to do. And I'm both anxious and excited about the work that is coming forward. I'm excited because it seems like these couple of days have helped us at least to make a list or make a list with make a to-do list of things that we have to keep tracking from now on. And that's important because that means organization, because I do think that revolution needs organization. So there's a couple of things that I want to mention that I've been reading. I have some notes that I want to share. The first one is well, there is something that I noticed on this convergence too that is different from the one that we had in April, and that is the fact that now I think we have more people. We had more people coming in with new issues and from different corners of the world. And I think our space is also like an invitation to expand our minds and hearts to reimagining the question of how to build the next systems from different perspectives, from different languages, from different cultural backgrounds. And for me, that's exciting. I think this time, what we did different from last time is that we challenged the concept of we challenged the concept of next systems and also the concept of teachings. And by challenging, I mean we open new doors to expand those two notions of the teachings and the next systems, right? How can we translate in cultural terms what that means in other countries, like in the global south, for instance? And another thing that I noticed, or another takeaway from all the talks, is we as people involved in the next systems, academics, non-academics, community leaders, I think we have a long way to go and a lot of work to do of seeing knowledge as a resource and time and space and as a resource, like as a tool to make things happening in a world, full of crisis. So for academics, I think that's quite a challenge, seeing knowledge as a resource, like as a tool. I don't know. I find that sometimes quite difficult. But I think these conversations are like a good step on the way of reframing what knowledge can mean in a world of crisis. Okay, so the second thing that I wanted to mention is that I was very inspired by Ben's talk this morning about well, about how to organize teachings and the next system teachings, and what are the steps that we kind of need to take to, towards that goal. I think, Ben, you mentioned, and if you can come in the screen right now would be great. Yeah. So sorry to put you on the spot. But I just wanted to say that because you talk about like four important pillars or steps, right? Like in first step, we need to know how to recognize a crisis. Second, we need to know about system design. We also need to know about system movements, and we need to know about systems change. But coming out of these 2 days of event, I think there's something else that we need to know.
Mhm.
And I think we need to know how to protect the designers and the
Mhm.
frontline designers and the next system shifters and the next change makers. And I'm just curious about, this is an invitation also to think about that question. Because building the next systems also imply, a notion of risk. And I think this was discussed in one of the sessions. I don't recall right now, but in one of the community wealth, university action, and municipal power, the concept of risk also emerges as a challenge for the new systems, in a sense that building a new system is not affordable for anyone under the edge of capitalism. And many of the challenges faced by the frontline new system builders and change makers and popular educators and community leaders that are facing are, being exhausted, underpaid, having to do double the work for more hours. Since the new system is not since the system in which they are building the new system is not designed
Mhm.
for them, right? Quite the opposite. Dismantling the current system is tiring and it's risky. So this is just a question out of curiosity of how can we incorporate also another pillar, about how to protect, or how to contemplate that aspect of the risk.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. Yeah, I'm really glad you brought those four, areas or domains. It's like it's sort of areas of questions and research. And so, to me, the question you're raising is a question that has to do with systemic movements, right? Social movements that have advanced to the point in which they're demanding a new system, working towards a new system. And so the question specifically is, so there are all kinds of questions involved if you're studying systemic movements. And one of those, is the question you're raising about, the fact that systemic movements are facing conditions usually that are not friendly, right? Um, and then that actually crosses over to another domain. So I think it's a really good illustration of how these domains can work, which is the domain of system change, which is exactly what you were just saying, which is that that movements are trying to change the system, but they're doing it under conditions of not of their own choosing, right? And so this is something where, there's a lot that we can draw on in terms of this scholarship on revolutions, social transformation, and reconstruction. So, for example, one thing that I bring into the classroom in our core seminar, Sociology 401, is some of the work of Eric Olin Wright, where he takes on the question of different pathways for system change and some of the considerations that come in, and he wrote so clearly, and it's very accessible for my undergraduate students, has to do with the process of system change and what that means for the people themselves in that process, both the activists but also the communities that are most sort of central. So, for example, in revolutionary periods, the sort of rupture in the system that opens up the opportunity for a revolutionary process can be more or less hard, and it can be longer or shorter in terms of sort of the instability, the chaos, the violence that's involved in that period. And the idea is that if it's longer and deeper in terms of that period, in terms of the decline in people's lives, right, then that is not good for the revolutionary movement, generally speaking. And if you can find ways to make it so that trough is the word that's oftentimes used, that decline is not as deep and it's not as long, then you'll have better outcomes. You're more likely to actually succeed. And if you can't, then that suggests that maybe a revolutionary strategy is not something that you want to be putting your efforts around. So I mean I could go on at length, but but yes, I totally agree with you that that's a critical question for next system studies. And so that's sort of how those four domains can work together. Right?
That's sort of what I've heard from popular educators and people coming into this space from spaces that are not academic spaces, like I am tired, I don't have enough money. It would be better if I would work for the government for
Yeah.
at least things would happen. So it made me reflect on that. And I just want to add one more thing. And this I think this is the same thing that I said last convergence in April. I still think that when I think about the next systems, my mind doesn't go to the future, but my mind goes more to the present, right? The next systems, it could be, a vision of the future, yes, but based on what's already here, right? The next systems are already here, but we need like a deeper look and extending also our network of people and community leaders in other places that are not global north centered. I think this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm being hired for, actually, and I'm very proud to be part of this team. This is very inspiring. And yeah, the work goes on. And I just want to invite other people from the group, maybe Kathryn, to talk about maybe other reflections.
So yeah, so first of all, I want to say I also, over the last 2 days, especially yesterday, I was really struck by the discussion of the crises that we are in. And the people that, we in the task force, we've been working together for at least a year and building things. And suddenly, some of the people that are coming in talking to us now because of how more intense things have become in the United States, we could really feel crisis here, and to what extent is this the so-called next system, or the breakdown of the old system, and as Ben said, the chaos, the instability, and that has been picking up, and the risk then, of course, for frontline workers, all of those things really picking up with the chaos and risk that we're seeing. So I just wanted to say that was my impression here at the convergence, how very specific things related to that here in the United States were really made evident in different ways. The other thing I'd say, Deissy, was that what to your point, that more and more thinking that the next systems, to what extent are they here, in their forms, in the forms that they are, and how building solidarity around next systems is going to be a strategy. So, for example, I can imagine that the teach-ins, that may part of their work is to bring some of those doing this next system, building very alternative systems together next to those who don't know about them, and also create the opportunity for strategic alliances here that will then make those expand those systems that are in the form that they are. So I just your note, your thinking about the presentness and struggle of those next systems that are working locally at certain scales, and what a teach-in might be able to do, and an organizer of a teach-in might be able to do to create new alliances for these emerging alternative systems.
We invite other people maybe to share more reflections. I know sometimes at the end of an event, we are so exhausted to come up with different conclusions, but I mean, if you are already willing to share reflections of the event, you're more than welcome.
I can throw also a question out there too, that for everyone, one thing that struck me in the last 2 days is that listening to activists and public scholars, I was really struck by where patterns are emerging, similarities, and then where things are looking very different in different places. So that again is in this kind of mini convergencing we have here. I can imagine that happening at scale differently in November when we do our teach-ins, that we will be looking and seeing patterns as that will help us understand larger systems differently, and also how diverse some solutions are because of where they are emerging.
Yeah, that is a really good point, Kathryn. I also, so Liza and I had a talk yesterday about how important is the cultural translation of the concept of teaching, depending on in what place of the world you are. And we try to, initiate, I mean, starting to do some explorations of how the thing can be named in different cultural contexts, I guess. The thing being the same thing, right? Which is basically a popular education experiment. And she and I found at least, I don't know, 10 different terms in, Spanish and in South America and in Africa of how can we, of terms that resonate the idea of teachings, from the idea, from building up from Ubuntu cosmologies in South Africa and the concept of, gathering there. And also in South America, the idea of a cabildo abierto, open assemblies, popular education movements, movimientos populares, all these concepts that we are kind of mapping, that should be part of the exercise of the map, by the way. The language issue, because language is not only about literal translations, but it's a cultural translation of a local context. So I think I'm one thing. I think I'm leaving this space very curious and excited about continuing the work towards that cultural translation and conversation. Because, by the way, I was listening to Leslie this morning, and I was very inspired. If Leslie, if you're there by your talk this morning, because you said something that is very true. Sometimes when you come to spaces that are non-white, people are suspicious from everything that comes from the global north, right? Including, all these concepts like next systems or teachings. So I think there is a delicate work to do there, of deepening into the translations and the right words and, looking for those local practices that translate into what we are trying to do here as a next system community. So I loved what she said this morning. We need to be very careful because, these are communities in the Global South that have suffered and been victims of different types of extractivism, including, intellectual extractivism by people from the global north, or people in Europe, or
Maybe somebody should step in as a reason.
Yeah, Daisy's frozen. I'm going to just throw in something here then, that what Daisy was saying about this translation, and this reminds me that I was participating in a international conference on commons, and this took place in Indonesia, in Yogyakarta. And so we were translating the term commons, the English term commons, into different languages. But the people I was with in Indonesia, they said the way we would think of it, there's a phrase for it. We would say it's teacher at the back of the room. The idea of teacher at the back of the room. And they tried to explain then what that would mean. And I think you know, and thinking of this for our teach-ins as well, that the idea of commons is that, you know, in a sense that, you know, at the front of the room, the teacher's telling you and lecturing, etc. At the back of the room, the function is more as a guide or, you know, and so instead of learning rules, one's learning maybe guiding principles or something, so that there's guiding principles that the students or the participants in the teach-in are going to be themselves translating, they're going to be themselves making meaning from, and so there's an empowerment idea of, so a teach-in, if the teacher's at the back of the room, you have speakers, but at the back of the room, you're creating community, you're creating commons, and you have an openness to what it is what is being taught and an engagement. So again, throwing that out there of the idea of a teacher at the back of the room. April, you're
Thank you. Of course. Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. I'm loving this conversation. One, you know, is that this is such an opportunity, right, to build those connections between what's already there, right? And that in itself, in my opinion, like is most of the work, like to building out that body. You know, there's so many like, you know, system change studies around, you know, helping the whole become aware of itself is a large part of what it means to build a new system. And I also think as we're doing, you know, outreach and coalition building, one thing I'm keeping in mind is this really big kind of aha moment that I had when I was visiting a pastor who was doing amazing community and neighborhood change work from an asset-based perspective in Indianapolis. I was in Sarasota at the time doing this neighborhood connectivity. And I went there and I was so amazed by their work. And I asked him, his name's Mike Mather. I was like, you know, one of my questions was, how do we involve more of the neighbors in our work? And he said, he kind of leaned back and smiled. He's like, well, here we've come to stop asking that question and instead of asking, how can we involve them in our work? We ask, how can we involve ourselves in what they're doing? Right. So I think the spirit of solidarity, like, yes, I'm doing this thing. I'd love to bring you in and have you be a part of it. But what are you doing? You know, how can what I'm doing be supportive of you and vice versa? Right. So I think just having that nuanced, really true dedication to relationship. And that will also keep us going in terms of, you know, joy, right? Because relationships bring joy and right, that sense of solidarity and care is what will keep us going. And I think that's especially important right now in terms of the point that you brought up, Deissy, around risk and danger and vulnerability, right? How can we, as we do this, be weaving, you know, true bonds of mutual care that can then extend out, you know, as we go, which that is the next system. And I think along those lines as well, like one thing I'm just really processing is, you know, how do we use this moment and these teach-ins not as this like add-on thing that you know, we're going to be thinking about all these concepts, but you know, this is a time to come together holding on to our sense of crisis, right? And in a moment where so few of us really feel like we have the answers, just be okay with that and lead with that. You know, lead with our instinct when we're in trouble is to come together. And that's what we're trying to do here, right? So those are, yeah, just some final thoughts that are staying with me.
I'd just like to share a brief thought about a topic that we necessarily did not cover, elections, and just point to two recent elections that really suggest how important our work on Next System, on the Next System projects are, right? One is the election just yesterday or day before yesterday of Zach Polanski in London to head up the Green Party. Right, sorry, in England, in the United Kingdom, to head up the Green Party. And what
Actually,
I found
England. You had it right.
Is it of England only?
Yeah,
Okay.
Scotland's independent. Yep, you got it.
Yep. Thanks, Phil. the election of Zach Polanski was followed immediately by him attending an event at a trade union that organizes migrant workers. And these migrant workers were largely people who staffed the national health system. And so what was so significant about it is that at the same time that these people are playing a critical role in the delivery of care to the English public, they are being attacked by anti-immigrant extreme right-wing forces funded by people like our dear Elon Musk and others. But in winning that election so overwhelmingly, 85% of the vote, he highlighted the kinds of issues that we are addressing through making and engaging in these various system change projects, right? So what it tells me is that our work is really very much in keeping with what the rest of the world is demanding, and where they have a chance to express it, they do so in electoral ways. The same thing can be said about the incredible campaign mounted in New York City by Suren Moodliar, right? To talk about government-owned or city-owned grocery stores, to talk about housing in a way about stabilizing the rent and continuing and thinking about different ownership models, about free transportation. That overwhelming electoral victory signals to me that we're on the right track by organizing on the ground on these topics. If Polanski or your party in the UK is to be successful, or if Suren Moodliar is to be successful in New York City, it will be because there's a strong network of the kinds of organizations that we mobilize and work with. And so I'm really glad to be part of this work. Thank you, everyone.
Can I add one last thought? Which is that I'm also so glad to be part of this work. And I was reflecting even just through the process of building this convergence together, as a team. And some of us see each other often, some of them not so much. But I've just felt so at home, with everyone, with each of you, with everyone who's been part of that. There's this incredible sense of discovery and safety and comfort and relief that comes with that sense of belonging. And it occurred to me, this is what we have the opportunity to share with so many others, but in place and globally at the same time, is that recognition, those imaginal cells finding each other. So yeah, I'm grateful, and I'm excited for more people to get to feel like this.
I'm just going to come in and just recognize the people in the chat and recognize the folks who have been, in some cases, largely behind the boards as well, meaning, helping to work, moving, the spotlighting around and working on Zoom and so on. So thanks to everybody for all your labor here too. And Deissy, do you have any last words that you'd like to share with us, a way to sign off?
Let's keep doing the work. There's a lot of work to do, and that's my main conclusion after these 2, days of gatherings and conversations. Yeah, I thank you everyone for making part of this, for conspire together and through building the new systems, and whatever the thing is named in other place of the world too, that is welcome too. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone that makes part of the task force and who make this possible. Especially, I know Gabriel, Ben, and April, Suren, they put a lot of labor into making all these meetings happening. This is not an easy event to organize considering the different time zones. So thank you, Gab, for that too. And Kelly too. Yeah, I think I'm forgetting a couple of people too.
Deissy, you've been right in here with us, though. So thank you.
Thank you. Dhruv too. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Being at a university, I was just so struck in the convergence and now about the really different kind of companionship and conversations that I'm able to have, that we've been able to have around here, especially around the crisis and etc. So I am so grateful, and I just want to invite everyone that I really strongly believe that when you start working in the format of what a teach-in can be in your area, you're going to experience this too. We have a lot of isolation in our lives. It's a real dilemma. And in a sense, it's a social form. The teach-in and what we've been trying to talk about here is a social form for these conversations and for this thing that we're all, feeling right now, and especially this joy and inability to articulate these things and bring clarity to a lot of these things we're experiencing. So thanks, everybody. Again, I invite all of you listening in. If you start organizing in this way with this format and these tools we're throwing out there, that I know you're going to find these people, find them around you, even more so than you have now. So yes, good luck, good work to everybody, and thank you everyone for all the work you've done here.
Thanks, everyone. See you in November.